Hey everybody, it is chapter book story time, and we are on chapter 12 of the Magic Misfits, the second story. So, in the last chapter that we read, we learned, the Misfits learned, so the whole group of Misfits got together and met up at the Grand Oak Resort. So we got Carter, Layla, Ridley, Theo, Ollie, and Izzy. And they all met up at the Grand Oak Resort, and they talked to Dean the Bellhop, who said that supposedly people were saying the rear building of the hotel was haunted. It's been closed for years because of fire damage. A fire who was started by supposedly Mr. Dante Vernon and his friends when they were young. Supposedly. They were never actually, no one was ever actually caught for the act, but that's the rumor. So, the Misfits decide that they're going to investigate, and they decide to recruit Sandra Santos for help because she's a psychic, so they think maybe she can talk to the ghosts. So Sandra ends up putting on a big show because a bunch of people from the hotel gather around to watch, and she tells these ghosts to basically peacefully leave. And so once she's done with her little seance, her little show where she's talking to these ghosts, supposedly, remember, some people believe this is real, some people believe it's just a trick or a show, so I don't know which it is. But in any case, she finishes it and says that it worked and the hotel is now ghost-free. Everyone's cheering, and then suddenly an angry voice called out from the back of the patio, "What is the meaning of all this?" So let's find out. What is the meaning of all this? Who is this that's yelling at them? Are these ghosts actually gone? Were they ghosts in the first place? Did Mr. Dante Vernon start the fire as a kid? I don't know. What's the key for? Layla's key. We still have so many mysteries to solve here, so let's keep going. Oh, noodles. All right, here we go. Chapter 12. The crowd parted, and a small man in a white suit stepped forward. Layla recognized the hotel's manager immediately, Mr. Arnold. He wore his dark hair parted precisely down the center of his scalp. His face always boiled red, even when he wasn't angry. He looked around at the members of his staff who were standing in the crowd. They glanced down and spread out, trying to avoid his gaze. "Well?" he demanded. "What is this?" So we know who was yelling at them. It was the hotel manager, Mr. Arnold. So a new character. "Hi, Mr. Arnold," said Izzy, waving as if she could simply shoo away his temper with a flick of her wrist. "Madame Esmeralda was doing a seance to get rid of the ghosts that were haunting the rear wing of the lodge. She's incredible." "Ghosts? Who said anything about ghosts?" Mr. Arnold scanned the crowd, making sure that none of the guests appeared disturbed. "Madame Esmeralda is actually quite famous," said Theo. "She performs all across the country, in front of huge crowds." The hotel guests, who'd been watching, let out a cheer. Mr. Arnold seemed to bask in the applause, as if he were the one who'd just done something incredible. Several women approached Sandra and asked her if she would be performing again before the end of the week. A couple others inquired about private readings. Sandra reached into her sleeve and handed them what looked like business cards. After seeing these interactions, the manager's expression changed from shock and frustration to smooth gratitude. He shook Sandra's hand. "It just so happens that our headliner 2 nights from now has canceled," Mr. Arnold whispered to her. "I would be honored if you would fill in." Sandra beamed. "I'd be thrilled." Mr. Arnold clapped his hands. "Wonderful," he exclaimed. "I'll have my team start advertising the show immediately. And what you did just now, and the way people talk in this town, the house is sure to be packed." With a wide grin, he turned and engaged with the resort guests. "This is so exciting," said Layla. "We get to see you on stage here at the Grand Oak." "It all worked out perfectly," said Theo. "And I have you to thank," Sandra said to the Misfits. "Seems to me as though you 6 might just be better at this at this? Seems to me that you six might just be better at this than my agent. Well then, if I'm to put together a show, I'd better start getting prepared. See you all very soon. And with that, she twirled her kaftan and started back up the path toward the main entrance. What just happened? Ridley asked, looking baffled. Magic? Carter asked. Ridley went on. But should we believe it? I have my doubts. Layla smacked her lips. Right now, I believe that I'm really thirsty. Let's go see Papa in the kitchen. I can't wait to tell him what just happened. Oops, Ollie cried. One of the mice had crawled out of his vest pocket and scrambled up his shoulder. Gotcha, said Izzy, snatching up the rodent and cradling it like a baby. The other mouse peeked out of Izzy's vest pocket, as if to see what was going on. Look how adorable they are. Maybe the other Mr. Vernon can give them some water, too. I think we should call them Ozzy and Illy, said Ollie. That might get confusing, said Izzy. Izzy was correct. It did get confusing. So if you remember, Ollie and Izzy got mice, little pet mice that they're keeping in their pocket. And Ollie just said that Ollie and Izzy should name their mice Ozzy and Illy, which is like their names switched around, which is really confusing. Alright, anyway. Ollie and Izzy are funny dudes, huh? In the resort kitchen, the kids found the other Mr. Vernon pouring what would become little chocolate soufflés into individual ramekins. Hey, Mr. V, Carter said. Could we have some lemonade? Of course. Help yourselves. Papa, Layla practically shouted as she hugged her father. You'll never guess what just happened. You are absolutely correct, he said with a tilt of his chef's hat. But I hope you'll tell me. Words burst forth from Layla's mouth. As she told him about the events of the last hour, Carter poured everyone glasses of ice-cold lemonade. When Layla finished her story, her papa looked impressed. He enveloped her in a great big bear hug. Sandra must be so pleased. I bet she'll save you the best seats in the house. I am intrigued to see what else she can do, said Theo. But let's talk about what she did do, said Ridley. Or did, said Ollie. Did ski bop a diddle doodle doo, Izzy improvised. Ridley rolled her eyes at the twins, and they quieted, suddenly interested in what was in their vest pockets. There were a bunch of flashing lights behind the curtains, said Ridley. Don't you think she could have controlled those somehow with, I don't know, electricity? I'll bet she had some helpers, said Carter. But who? Asked Layla. Sandra didn't say anything about bringing a whole group of people to Mineral Wells with her. All right, so now Ridley's trying to break it down. She's asking the question, what did Sandra actually do? Because we know Ridley is skeptical here. She doesn't think that Sandra was actually talking to ghosts. She says they saw, flashing lights behind the windows. She's like, that could have been electricity. She could have had other people helping her. So she's trying to break down what Sandra actually did. Was it magic, real magic? Or was it just, trick magic, show magic? What do you think? Perhaps Sandra set it all up herself, Theo suggested. I imagine she could have used ropes or maybe wires to manipulate the windows. Though Layla usually loved debunking tricksters and questioning illusions, she found herself getting strangely aggravated. Sandra was so worldly and fashionable and fun. Layla wished the Misfits would give her the benefit of their doubts. Layla found herself on the edge of telling her friends to stop it when the other Mr. Vernon said, "What are those?" So her friends are all questioning. They want to figure out the trick, right? They want to figure out how Sandra put on that show, how she made it happen, because they don't think that she's really talking to ghosts. They think it was a show to make people happy, right? But Layla's feeling a little frustrated. She She wants to believe in Sandra. She wants to believe that Sandra is really a psychic who can, talk to ghosts and read minds. Layla found herself on the verge of telling her friends to stop it when the other Mr. Vernon said, "What are those?" He pointed his spoon at the mouse noses peeking out from Ollie's and Izzy's pockets. Certainly not mice," Ollie said. "Out of my kitchen," the other Mr. Vernon demanded. "I love you kids, but you have health code violation written all over your new pocket friends. Out, please." "Thanks for the lemonade," Carter said, pushing Ollie and Izzy toward the exit. "Love you, Papa," Layla added, following the group to the lounge area beyond the kitchens. "Bad Ozzy and Illy," Ollie said. "No cheese for you." "Come on, let's get our mice back home. We have rehearsal," Izzy noted. "And the rest of us should get going too," Ridley said. "I have a new trick at home that needs my attention." As the kids moved through the lounge, Layla saw that the tall-backed pleated leather chairs and dense, dark wood side tables were arranged into small seating areas. Moose, deer, and bear head trophies hung from the walls. Enormous potted palms, ferns, fiddle-leaf fig trees, and birds of paradise plants greened up the space, giving privacy to the people who were seated, reading newspapers or huddling together in hushed conversation. When she'd first come to Mineral Wells, Layla would play alone in this room, hiding among the grand plants, pretending the animal trophies were hunting her and she needed to be sneaky enough to escape from them. She smiled at the happy memory. The Misfits were almost at the exit when the sound of Sandra's voice came from somewhere nearby, stopping Layla in her tracks. "Sandra's still down here," she said. "Where?" Ridley asked. "I don't see her." "There," said Carter, pointing to a far corner of the lounge. The woman sat by herself in one of the leather chairs, wearing a worried expression. She was leaning backward, as if trying to hide among the leaves of one of the giant decorative plants. Layla corralled the group behind a wide column. "What's wrong with her?" she said. "Do you think she's all right?" "She seems to be talking to herself," said Theo. "What's she saying, though? Do you think she's still trying to communicate with the hotel's ghosts?" Ridley sighed. "There are lots of reasons she might be talking to herself. Maybe she's running through her stage performance in her head. Maybe she's thinking of supplies she'll need. Maybe she's just insane." "That's not nice, Ridley," Layla said. "I never said I was nice," Ridley said with a wicked little smile. "Izzy and I talk to ourselves all the time," said Ollie, "and we're perfectly normal." "We're also normally perfect," Izzy added with a tap dance flourish. "Well, I am, at least." From the privacy of her leather chair, Sandra hissed at seemingly no one. "Absolutely not! I won't do it!" Peering around the column, Layla could see the woman's face turning red. Sandra was about to burst into tears. Layla stepped forward and rushed over, calling out to Sandra, "Is everything okay?" Flustered, Sandra scrambled to her feet. "Layla, what are you still doing here?" Layla stammered, I... But nothing else would come out of her mouth. "Everything is fine," said Sandra, her fearful expression melting away into a sad smile. "I need to go to my room now, but I'll be in touch, okay? Make sure you tell Dante about the show. I'd hate for him to miss it." Okay." When Layla blinked, she found that the woman was already racing away toward the lobby staircase. The others came up quietly behind her. "What was that all about?" asked Theo. Layla's cheeks flushed, but she forced a smile. "I'm not really sure." That was strange. So they're in the lobby of the hotel, about to leave. Everyone's about to head home when they hear Sandra, and they look over, and she's sitting by herself, talking to no one that they can see. And she seems worried, upset, distressed, like she's about to start crying, and she's saying, "No, I won't do it." And Layla steps up to try to check on her, and she's like, "Oh no, everything's fine." And she leaves and goes to her room. Who is she talking to? And what is she saying she won't do? I don't don't know. The mysteries keep building in this one. So many mysteries. All right, we got a little bit more to go. That evening, Layla and Carter sat by the light of the long taper candle and drank sweet birch beer with Mr. Vernon in the parlor of the apartment. The sound of peeping tree frogs drifted in through the open windows as Carter told him about the day. Mr. Vernon snapped his fingers absent-mindedly at the flame, changing it from yellow to green to blue to red. Each time it changed, Carter gave a small cheer. Layla was in an uncharacteristically quiet mood. Finally, she broke her silence. Dad, did the emerald ring ever hang out at the Grand Oak Resort? Mr. Vernon seemed to consider how to answer. We did, yes. Quite a bit, actually, in the rear wing of the lodge, when it was still habitable. But eventually we drifted apart. That's weird, said Carter. Sandra didn't mention anything about it. Layla wanted to ask her dad about the fire that Carter had neglected to bring up, but she was nervous that discussing the rumor would put a clamp on his sudden willingness to talk. It's not weird at all, Mr. Vernon said. The best magicians know how to control their audience's attention. Whatever happened today, those tales of a haunting followed by a seance, happened because Sandra wanted them to. What do you mean? Asked Layla. Let me ask you a question. When did the rumors of the ghosts at the Grand Oak begin? Ollie and Izzy said it was just recently, Carter answered. Interesting. Mr. Vernon sipped from his glass. What's so interesting about that? Asked Layla. Mr. Vernon licked at his mustache as if he was pretending not to hear. I think what he's saying is that there's a connection between Sandra arriving at the Grand Oak and the rumors of the haunting starting up. That is a strange coincidence, said Mr. Vernon. So Mr. Vernon is saying that the rumors of the ghosts at the Grand Oak Resort started when Sandra arrived at the Grand Oak Resort. And he said anything that happened that day with the seance and the haunting happened because Sandra wanted them to happen. So who do you think started the rumors of the ghosts? At least according to Mr. Vernon. Who does Mr. Vernon think started the rumors about the ghosts? He thinks that Sandra started the rumors about the ghosts because she wanted to put on a show. And now she's got her own show happening at the Grand Oak Resort, so this is good for her career as a psychic. So Mr. Vernon thinks that Sandra started the rumors to so that she was able to put on a show and use her psychic skills. But maybe it's not a coincidence, right, Dad? The man with the curly white hair stared out of the window, a smile creeping across his face. My, it finally seems to be cooling off. Do you feel the breeze? Layla groaned. Her dad was doing the thing where he'd give her a tiny hint and then expect her to figure out exactly what was on his mind. So you're saying that Sandra arranged all of it? Mr. Vernon finally faced her again. Magicians' tricks can sometimes have very long setups before they pay off. Can you tell us anything more about your old club, Mr. Vernon? Carter asked. What did you guys do in your meetings? Who were your other friends? Oh, we weren't so different from your own magic club. Mr. Vernon yawned, and then stood up. But it's already so late. I'm afraid any more stories would only bore you to sleep. If only there were a place in Mineral Wells where you could search for answers to your questions. He wandered into the kitchen to put his empty glass in the sink. Then he called out, Good night. A place in Mineral Wells? Carter repeated to Layla. Another hint, she said, rolling her eyes, amused that her dad was so predictable, and also not. It would be easier if he'd just tell us, Carter said, laughing. Layla raised her eyebrows. We already know that Dante Vernon doesn't do easy. And with that, the two gave each other a quick hug and went off to bed. But they didn't go to sleep, not right away. Layla could hear Carter knocking on the wall between their rooms. It followed a recognizable pattern, Ridley's Morse code homework. His knocks came again. Dash dot, dash dash dot, dash 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 dot dot dot. Layla clutched at her key, which was resting on her chest. She tapped on the wall beside her bed. Dash, dash, dot, dash, 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 dot, dot. After that, his knocking stopped, and the sound of the tree frogs peeping from outside was like a lullaby, luring Layla to sleep. And that is the end of our chapter. So remember, the dot, dot, dash, 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 that's Morse code. It's like a secret language kind of a thing that they can send messages to each other. But they didn't tell us what they were actually saying when they were doing Morse code on the wall. So I don't know. But we did learn some things. When, at the end of the chapter, Carter and Layla are talking to Mr. Dante Vernon, and they asked him, did you and your friends used to hang out at the Grand Oak Resort? And he did confirm that, yes, they did hang out, not only at the Grand Oak Resort, but in the rear wing, that back building that had caught fire all those years ago. But they didn't ask him about the fire specifically. And the other thing we learned is that Mr. Vernon thinks that Sandra set up this whole rumor of ghosts and the haunted building and all that to allow her to put on a show and kind of like get this gig at the Grand Oak Resort. But Layla's still reluctant. Like, all of her friends, even her dad, are saying that, you know, it's just a trick. It's just a show to make people happy, which is fine. But Layla seems really reluctant. She really wants to believe that Sandra is the real deal, that she's really a psychic. So I don't know. But we'll have to keep reading next time to find out more. There's still a lot of mysteries for us to solve here. Layla's key. What is Sandra doing in Mineral Wells? Who was she talking to when she was seemingly talking to herself? How is Mr. Dante Vernon involved and his old friends, the Emerald Ring? So we still have a lot of questions. Not to mention BB Bozzo's monkey is still running around somewhere. So I don't know. A lot of questions to solve still. I'm excited to keep reading and to find out more. So we'll keep reading next time. See you later.